air war between the two countries, it would be over very quickly if the Russians put all they had into the air war. Hi guys, and welcome back to the Storm and Cellar. A lot of discussion's been made recently about Russia and Ukrainian air power and how well they would stack up against one another. So before we get into the actual numbers, I believe it's important to talk about the denuclearization of Ukraine after the fall of the Soviet Union. At that time, Ukraine was actually the third largest nuclear power on the planet. So it's really important when discussing the current era order of battle to understand what happened between the two countries back then. So in 1994, the U.S., UK, and Russia agreed under the Budapest Memorandum that Ukraine would exchange all of its nuclear arms in exchange for state sovereignty. Well, apparently that didn't work out very well, now did it? So Ukraine then destroyed or transferred all of its nuclear capability, all of its nuclear weapons, including its Tu-160 Blackjack bomber. So now Ukraine is strictly operating from a position of tactical aircraft only. According to the World Directory of Modern Aircraft, Russia and Ukraine stacks up kind of like this, and I have on both sides of the screen the actual numbers of different types of aircraft. And the first one, you can obviously see Russia has a lot more aircraft than Ukraine of various kinds. Fighter aircraft, these are the type of aircraft that would be used in air-to-air engagements, but also they're a multi-role aircraft which can be used air-to-ground. But as you can see, the Russians have a whole lot more of them. Dedicated attack aircraft. Now these aircraft would be used if you were using them against targets on the ground, knocking out airfields, railways, any type of industrial war-making targets. So you can see they have a lot more of those as well. The bombers, Russia has bombers, Ukraine has none. And they also have strategic and tactical bombers. The other thing is close air support. Now, close air support is something that you have when you're trying to support your troops on the ground. You've got enemy here, friendlies here, and they're going to be in close proximity, and you're going to try to drop bombs on them to support the troops. Two things that fighter pilots have to know and be very cognizant of to increase their SA, situation awareness, is that there's a FIBA and a FLOT. The FIBA is forward edge of the battle area, and then you got the FLOT, the forward line of own troops. So you need to know where those are all the time so that you're not going to inflict any damage or drop any bombs on your friendlies. The other thing, airlift. Russia has a whole lot of airlift, both strategic and tactical airlift. Ukraine has practically nothing. Trainers, there's a lot more trainers in Russia, obviously, but all of these aircraft, not all of these aircraft, but some of these aircraft can also be retrofitted for combat use. So that helps out with the numbers a little bit. Tankers, can't overemphasize the use and ability to have tanker support. Of course, Ukraine has none, but Russia has 19 air refuelers, which now what that does is in the battle space, it increases the amount of on time that a fighter would have, where they can go hit the target and then go back, take gas from the tanker, hit the target, and maybe even do another air refueling before they have to return to their base. And of course, Ukraine does not have that capability. Special mission aircraft. You've got electronic intelligence aircraft, reconnaissance aircraft, airborne warning control system, AWACS type aircraft, and also electronic warfare. Russia has the whole gamut. The only thing the Ukrainians have are some recon aircraft. Now, the most important aircraft in there, I think, is obviously the AWACS, which will provide God's eye view of the whole battlefield, of what's going on, so it increases the situational awareness of commanders on the ground, including all the aircraft in the battle space. Also, the electronic warfare, which has the ability to jam signals on surface-to-air missiles, such as the S-300. Ukraine, all they have is 2 or 3 recon aircraft. Utility helicopters, the old Soviets and the Russians depended heavily on those aircraft in Afghanistan, and they have a lot of them. A lot of attack utility helicopters, and of course Ukraine doesn't have very many at all. Now, all of these numbers are based on an average of mission capable rate, we call it MC rate, and it doesn't take into account all of the more obsolete aircraft such as the MiG-21s that the Russians may have in their inventory as well. Another thing to consider is that most of the aircraft that the Ukrainians have are Soviet made, so the supply chain could be disrupted there, getting those parts and everything and aircraft from Russia, which they are not going to give to them. However, you do have countries like Poland that has MiGs that could give parts, and as recently we're in the news, Polish government offered to give their MiG-29s to the Ukrainians through a U.S. Air Force base in Germany, which I think that kind of fell through. So anyway, you can see that could kind of be a little bit of a problem. As you can see, the air order of battle is pretty lopsided. And so an actual air war between the two countries, it would be over very quickly if the Russians put all they had into the air war. However, there's 2 things that make me wonder what's really going on with both sides and what they're thinking. One is the amount of attack and bomber aircraft the Russians do have. There must be some reason why they didn't employ them against airfields, logistics targets, and things like that. Most of the war right now has been tanks and artillery and maybe a few aircraft. The only thing I can think of is perhaps the Russians just don't want the bad PR of having some of their aircraft shot down by the S-300s. And there's 100 or so scattered strategically around Ukraine right now. So that could possibly be it. It was also reported recently, and of course you never know in the news during wartime whether it's accurate or not, but the Ukrainian government said that their SAM shot down 2 Su-35s. And again, I'm not really sure that happened, but these are old missile systems that perhaps the Russian EW, electronic warfare aircraft, could have neutralized. Also, according to the Guardian, UK Guardian, UK sent over 3,000 sophisticated Starstreak anti-aircraft missiles to Ukraine. Now, these missiles are supposedly like awesome. I mean, they are really deadly and accurate, and they sent a bunch of them to them. The U.S., Netherlands, and Germany also sent Stinger missiles. Now, Stinger missiles aren't very effective against fighter aircraft, but those attack helicopters and utility helicopters, they can bring those down pretty darn easily. The other thing I'm really surprised about is as few aircraft as Ukraine have. I would have thought that they would have strafed and bombed the Russian convoy recently that was stalled for days on the highway, and they didn't take advantage of that. It was reminiscent of back during the Gulf War when we had the highway of death with retreating Iraqi soldiers out of Kuwait. And our A-10s and aircraft just strafed them and just destroyed everything on that highway. So it's kind of too late now because all those tanks and artillery have dispersed into the woods and to smaller units. So now it's a little harder to locate them and destroy them. So the thing I'll leave you with on this is that air power alone will not determine the outcome of a war. Although it can deliver devastating destruction on others' military infrastructure, it can also, when used using non-precision weapons indiscriminately can unfortunately cause a huge death toll among a nation's civilian population. Finally, it comes down to the will of the people to resist and the will of a nation to support a war. Russia found this to be true in Afghanistan. The United States found it to be true in Vietnam. I will say also that politics plays a big part of that as well. No matter how good your air power is, the politicians can usually screw it up pretty badly, as they did in Vietnam. So we'll leave it there. If you have any comments, please leave them in the space below. Feel free to leave those comments, and if you like the channel, please give me a thumbs up. Be sure and subscribe to the channel, and just remember, until next time, always make sure your takeoff and landings equal. Until next time, have a good day.